to the lead, day to the lead, day to the lead, solution, day to the lead, day to the day, the D solutions podcast.
All right. Hey, everyone. This is Graham.
And this is Ashkahn.
And today's question is, hello, lovely humans.
Nice.
Hello, right back at you.
Hey.
My question is, how do you handle business partner disputes? If you guys disagree on a direction for Float On, does one partner have decision authority? Or do you have another process for reaching a decision? Or do you always just agree with each other?
What do you think there?
What do you think?
I think that the correct
No,
answer
I don't
is...
think so. It's probably totally wrong. Yeah, I completely disagree with it.
All right, so what do you do when you have a really annoying business partner who has real bad ideas all the time?
I don't think that's what the question was.
It's an interesting question because having a business partner, people often relate it to like being married, except it's like even harder to get out of a business partnership than it is to get out of a marriage.
And we have many business partners that float on too, so it's kind of like a
polygamous
five-way marriage. Yeah.
And there, as you know, running a business, there are a lot of decisions that come up all the time, and they're often decisions that revolve around like gut feelings and instincts. You don't always have like nice data to follow or things like that. At certain points, you just have to make judgment calls, and sometimes you have different judgment than other people.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
I think that was the question, right? Like it's So
this is a weird one for us because I feel like what goes a long way towards this is just having found the right business partners to begin with. Like there's a certain amount of generally being on the same page with someone or kind of having the same perspective or having it so that like every time something comes up, you don't have radically different views on the situation than the other person. Like I feel like that's a much more difficult scenario than when most of the time you agree and it's just these kind of once in a while situations where you have different opinions from one another.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like a marriage where you do have things come up that you need to resolve and talk through and work around, and then, a marriage where that's every single day you're just at each other and bickering and quarreling, right? So certainly just the volume and that kind of dynamic is determined well before, the problems arise. So if that's it, I mean, if you're constantly arguing with your business partners, then more drastic solutions might be in play.
That's probably not a great scenario. So we'll assume that that's not the case. You found a good business partner. You're happy working together. Things most of the time are pretty similar in your perspectives and point of view.
And good work too, because we certainly haven't gotten there. Yeah, sheesh.
I'm jealous. And what do you do in the few times that disputes do come up?
So it depends a little bit. I mean, so we obviously do a bunch of different things too, between our shop and Float Tank Solutions and the conference and our other projects like the Helm. So taking it back, I guess, back to when we were all kind of running the shop and working there and being active owners of the shop, I feel like we kind of just did like a conversation of attrition lots of times to get past disagreements. It's like we sort of talk through them and work things out, and really, like, whoever felt passionately enough to keep the conversation going and really pushing their side, eventually I think it kind of reaches this point where we're like, okay, well, let's go with that and try it out and see what happens, as opposed to kind of hitting these stalemates where, two people just absolutely want their own way and there is no middle ground or anything like that.
Yeah, it's often that someone feels a lot more strongly about their opinion than other people do. And in those cases, we're just like, okay, like this clearly seems like you are really like intent on doing it this way, so let's go with that.
Yep. And it depends on the nature of the decisions too, right? Like there's a decision, for instance, should we offer a discount to students or something like that? And that's something where it's like, okay, there are decisions within that to offer or decide. I mean, do you how big is the discount? How long are you going to offer it for? Is this a permanent thing? Are you going to put up signs around the shop and list it on the front page of your website? Like all of these are decisions that need to get made, but it's for something that you can always change relatively easily. If you launch a discount that's too big and you're like 50% off for students, and then you realize you just can't handle that and you want to bring it down to 25% off, all of that's pretty manageable. for changing. If the decision that you're disagreeing on is about something like raising your prices or what to do for that, like obviously doing a price raise is just this much more serious piece of work that you need to do with very lasting repercussions and redoing all of your signage and all of your online sites, and something that you can't quite undo. So I feel like our that war of attrition sort of tactic for resolution works really well for decisions that can be changed or taken back. In that case, it is sort of like, okay, well, you feel really strongly about it. Let's go with it and see what happens, And then for more serious decisions, I feel like we kind of do a little bit of narrowing down. It's a lot of getting together and talking and going through the justifications behind what each of us thinks. Like, let's say it's a price raise, and one person thinks we shouldn't raise our prices, and one person thinks they should go up $5, and one person thinks they should go up like $20.
Well, the interesting thing is, I feel like what you just said, explaining the justification behind your decisions, is, I think, a really useful one, because often everybody agrees on the justification. It's just the way of achieving that goal that sometimes gets disagreement. So usually our conversations go down to that level when we're like, well, I think this because this, this is the reason why I think that's going to have a certain impact, and this is the type of impact I want something to have. And then when you kind of everyone is going towards that same goal, it helps people come up with other ways of meeting that goal that everyone feels good about. It kind of fuels the problem solving process that comes up with solutions that no one had to begin with, but is something that everyone actually enjoys.
Yeah. I guess, and some general things too. I mean, just to keep in mind, I think part of the thing or the reason that we work well together as a team of owners when we hit problems is we kind of have a very similar stance of problem solving, in the sense of when something arises and you do need to make a decision and you reach a disagreement, a good thing to do is kind of step back and just look at things rationally and see what's going on there, really. So looking at the upsides, if things go right with your plan, looking at the downsides, if things go wrong with your plan, trying to think through any weird things that might happen that you haven't thought of so far. A price raise has all sorts of potentially unintended consequences, from regular customers spending less money to actually boosting up your memberships, things like that. So really just taking the time to think through the logical conclusions of what you're doing, and also put yourself outside of your own little bubble that you're in with your thoughts to observe it from a more objective kind of stance where what you expect to happen just might not happen at all. And then what are some possibilities, and that's a good way to look through some of these. And I just highly recommend actually even looking into maybe doing a tiny bit of research on problem solving in general and discussion-based communication.
Yeah, and giving things some time to settle in, I think, helps a lot too. We often do that when we have a big decision to make. We'll have a conversation, we'll talk about a bunch of stuff, and then we'll just stop. We won't make a decision right then because...
come back to it in another couple of years, what's the rush?
Yeah, forget about it, just take it easy. But it's because it's hard, when you're talking about some really big things and they're complicated, and it's hard to think about all the repercussions, and it's hard to wrap your mind around a crazy idea someone has all of a sudden. It was just so different than what you were thinking that it sounds crazy to you at first. But when you just wait, if you just let those things simmer and kind of process in the background, and you come back to that conversation later, it often makes you realize that you actually feel okay with something that sounded crazy to you to begin with, or actually now that you've thought about it, you think that's a really bad idea because you've realized all these potential downfalls that could happen. Mm-hmm. That kind of simmering process, I think, helps our brains just deal with big complicated questions.
And there's something else came to mind too, which is a little bit more how we do things now than how we did them in the past too, when we're all kind of equally and actively engaged in whatever project we're working on, which is, and even if you're the only owner of your shop and you're not even in a debate with another person, but just kind of internally trying to decide between things, I still recommend this, which is check in with your staff. Check in with other people who are working at your center. Even your customers sometimes can help you make these decisions. You don't have to go into a void and come up with whatever it is that your plan is and then implement your plan also in a void and then finally release it to your staff or to your customers or whoever it's going to impact. You can kind of come up with what you think would be a good option and then ask the people who are going to be impacted by it. If your decision does impact your staff, then bring them in on the decision and see what they think about things and if they have any ideas. Same for customers. If you're planning a price raise, if you're planning something drastic, maybe before you actually implement it, just call in some of your most regular customers and some of your members and chat with them about what you're thinking and why, and get some feedback from them too. So, your decision can be informed by more than just owner discussions.
And especially with things with like your employees, that's especially like even if you're pretty confident in your idea or something, like having people give feedback and weigh in, like it makes things seem a lot less like there's just rules coming down from up high. And you know, when you put stuff in place like that and no one is at any say, like it's an easy place for people to get upset and not want to do things. But even if the end result is the exact same thing, but people have had some chance to like have input, it makes people all kind of feel like they're on the same page or working together to create a new thing or goal or rule or whatever you're doing. So it usually just that feedback process is kind of nice for other reasons than just problem solving.
Yeah, unilateral, in private decision making really makes people feel disenfranchised. You know, like, it's amazing how much just including someone in on the process of making decisions makes them feel like they have this weight in the process. Again, even if the outcome is exactly the same.
Yeah, and it's same for you and your business partners. Like there's something that's just nice about being able to voice your thoughts, and even if like the end result is they had no impact and everyone's still going with the plan that took your thoughts, like and you know, they in no way influenced the outcome. Like it, because you got a chance to talk and everyone talked about it and worked it through, it makes you feel a lot more on board when the solution comes up. It doesn't feel like, okay, these people were just not even listening. It's like, okay, everyone did listen to me and we discussed things and this other way still seems like the best direction to go. It leads to a lot less just like, I don't know, like holding on to kind of those things after the decision is made. It makes everyone feel like the decision is made, we're done with the decision-making process now. And I'm not going to like constantly be in my head thinking like, oh, why didn't they do the thing I said?
Yeah. For sure. And of course, again, the people who your decisions are going to be influencing the most, that's especially important, right? Like go down to the level where the decisions are actually going to have an impact and make sure that you get buy-in there. And maybe that's just with other owners. Maybe that's with your staff. Maybe that is your customers. But yeah, anyway, that's a good way to go.
And it's useful too to break down your problems into chunks. I think it's just difficult to take on a big challenging question that has a lot of different variables to it, but kind of like taking some time to think about the individual chunks of what you're talking about. You know, if it is a price raise, like what your memberships are going to be and how it affects your current members, and kind of like looking through each one of those piece by piece often will help you come up with like a better answer to the whole. And it just makes the whole thing like a lot more approachable.
Yeah, and it's amazing how when you do that with a collaborative force of other people around working on the same thing, your conclusions often end up pretty similar. Like, I think people end up in bigger disagreements when in their own little silo or by themselves they're coming up with some kind of solution to a problem without discussing it actively. Like, even internally, I really try to prevent from forming my own solutions too concretely before we enter into discussions. You know, like I just learned so much from thinking of it through other people's viewpoint and through breaking down those problems into like tiny little compartments almost. And I'm just not going to do as good a job thinking through everything that could happen with each one of those different compartments as if we had a large group around. And again, like a group of, you know, our manager, actual owners, employees, like a diverse group who is looking at it from different perspectives can also just help with that breakdown and make sure that you're not letting anything slip through the cracks.
Yeah, you know, and all these things, again, like problem solving advice, it really helps. Like when you're going through and like the question or the issue is what you're both like on a team trying to solve, leads to a lot less of this kind of dispute mentality where it's one person against another, like one person's ideology against another person's.
Yeah, I guess like especially being in a company with 5 owners, it really teaches you like humility for your own ideas. You know, like you have to be willing to let them go or change as you bring it to the group. Like you can't just have an idea and that's it, and that's the way it's going to be, and there is no better idea, you know, almost like the more attached you get to your own idea of genius, I think that can be a real problem. And that goes beyond business advice. That's just like you need to let your ideas morph and change and not just be so clinging to them. And
I mean, this is hopefully the reason you have a business partner, right? If like you hate the fact that you ever have to compromise on your own ideas, like you made a mistake bringing on a business partner.
You did a bad thing, yeah.
So yeah, stuff like that is really useful. And, you know, technically you can vote based on your percentage ownership. You know, that's like the most like end of the line, I think, sort of solution is like at some point you could take a vote based off of, you know, whatever's in your operating agreement and voting. But like my hope is to never have things come to that. Like we've never actually had to do that. We've never had to make a business decision by voting based off the weight of our like equity in the company or anything like that. But you know, there are businesses that do that, and that's when they make big decisions. That's what they do. And
so one last thing that I had that it occurred to me too is One thing I like doing now that we're a little more out of the shop and that we have it managed by employees and have Marshall, our shop manager, in there kind of heading things up, is coming to some decisions, involving him a lot in those conversations. And ultimately, if there's still something to be decided, like we just did this for setting a price for a sale that we were planning on running and kind of debating back and forth which prices we wanted and stuff like that. And we kind of came down to two prices, which are like $2 different, so pretty close. And then we're just like, hey, you know what? Like these are kind of equal in our minds. Why don't you decide? Or why doesn't the shop decide which you want between here? So like a very active conversation to get everyone on the same page, and then actually leaving it up to our shop manager to make the final call because he's the one who's most closely tied into shop operations right now. So, and I think people appreciate that kind of, again, even if it's like a $2 difference, which isn't like the biggest decision you can make in the world, it's still giving people a little more autonomy, and I think they do appreciate that.
Yeah. And if push comes to shove, sometimes I just tell Graham that we're going with his idea and then secretly enact my own. And, then he's happy, we're happy, and everybody's good. So you can do that too if you want.
I don't recommend it, but I would never give that advice. All right.
Yeah.
So good luck.
Yeah.
I hope I don't know what you had specifically in mind when you sent us this.
Group hugs help.
I hope it all works out.
Yeah.
Name calling is a very productive means of communication sometimes.
Wedgies.
Right? Wet Willy.
All right. If you guys have other questions out there, you can go over to floattankSolutions.com/podcast.
Sling them our way.
And we'll fling them out of our mouths with some answers.
Do the old mouth fling back at you, yeah. All right. Talk to you soon, everyone.
Bye.
Maybe tomorrow.
Definitely tomorrow.
Definitely tomorrow.